Alright, in this video I'm going to try and go over the basics of a street tune. Okay, starting fresh, we just opened up Nistune. We will consult to the ECU, go to File, Open Main ECU Image, and we'll use our base tune, which is the Z31 BG30ET 1987 manual transmission bin file. We'll open this, load this in Nistune, click the green up arrow to upload the tune to the ECU, and then we will also burn it to save it permanently on the ECU. Now we'll go back to our operations, Resize Injectors, 180 cc for the factory naturally aspirated injector size, 490 for the Mercedes-Benz injectors. It puts our K constant at 222, which I have played with the tune already, and I have found that this is a pretty close value. We will not select the adjust load scalars. When I looked at that, it didn't really adjust them properly, or what I think should be done. So we'll just go ahead and click OK. There we go. I think this already uploaded it to the ECU, but I am just going to upload one more time and burn one more time to make sure everything's saved. All right, just real quick, the first step is narrowing down the K value, and you do that by driving around in the closed loop area of the map. You can see on this one I've edited it to be a lot smaller, but you want to be in the closed loop area of the map and around a quarter load, depending on what that is, whatever your scale range is. And then you're looking for your air-fuel ratios to be pretty close to 14.7. There's a couple ways you can do that. You can look at your wideband gauge, so you can look at your short fuel trims and long fuel trims. If you see that the short fuel trim or long fuel trim is coming down and has like a negative percent value, that's when the ECU is taking out fuel on top of the K constant. So that would kind of signify that you might need to drop your K constant down a little bit. If your fuel trims are going up and have a positive percentage, that's the ECU putting more fuel in on top of what your K value is. So you'll need to increase your K value to a higher number to try and put a little bit more fuel in. And the reason you're looking for quarter load in the map right here is you also want to be at a normal operating temperature, anywhere between 80 and 90 degrees. It shows Celsius on the coolant tip here. And when you're at a quarter load, it kind of it puts you in the fuel map with no other like after crank enrich, or no other tables are affecting the fueling at this quarter load area. And the injection latency is going to be a very small percentage of this fuel injection, so it shouldn't really affect the air-fuel ratios that much at a quarter load in the map. Alright, so before we start the car, one good feature is the trace feature, input trace. It's this radio button up here. If you click this, this will bring up this graph. And this is where you can trace your AFRs across the map while you're driving. And it will store the AFR value in these grids wherever you have reached these grids as you're driving. So this is a useful tool to see where you're going lean, where you're going rich, and you can adjust the fuel map based off this. I did notice there is a drop-down box with a scroll bar on the side, so I thought the O2 left-hand side was what I would need for the wideband that I connected, but I was incorrect. I actually had to scroll down and select. It's actually not showing up because the wideband is not connected, but if the wideband was connected, it would say LFAR for the left air-fuel ratio. That's actually what you need to select, or what I need to select, in order to get the AFRs to show up in the grid. You can also use things like TP load. You can track those, your short and long fuel trims, among other things. So this is a good useful tuning utility. Alright, the first thing that really needs to be dialed in is the K value, if the injector resize didn't put it close. If we open the fuel map by clicking it over here in the left hand column, The light blue shaded area is the closed loop area where the ECU looks at the O2 reading and tries to get the air fuel mixture to 14.7 just based off the narrowband O2. This is why I have the narrowband output connected to the stock harness, is so I can get this O2 narrowband O2 feedback and look at the short and long fuel trims. So basically what you want to do here, they talk about rolling it on a dyno, but if you're on the street, you basically want to be in 4th gear or 3rd gear, and you kind of want to be at 2,000 RPMs and about a quarter load on the map. You know, quarter load will be right about here. When we adjust the load scales, that will change a little bit, but you want to be in the closed loop area around 2,000 to 3,000 RPMs and about a quarter of the way over. And you want to try and hold it there and look at your fuel trims and AFR to see if you can get them as close to 14.7 as possible. And then to adjust the K constant, it's down here under injection control, and you can either highlight this window and use the plus and minus to go up by 10, or you can click the up and down arrow to go up and down by 1. So increasing the K value with bigger injectors would make the entire map more rich, and decreasing the K value would make the entire map more lean. The other adjustment we need to look at is the injection latency. I haven't dialed this down all the way. Once you get your K value more or less sorted at the 2,000 RPM range quarter load, then back at idle, you can adjust the injection latency, and that should be able to dial in your low-end idle to get good AFRs at 14.7. One other thing that is or could be recommended, I think it said in the software guide or the mapping guide, I believe, is to take a couple degrees of timing out of the timing map. So what I did is just select the timing map over here on the left side, and then in this high load area on the top right, I'll just select this, click and drag, and then with all that highlighted, we can hit the minus button, and it will decrease all these values across the board by 1. So there's 4 degrees down, all on this high load area. So this should be a little bit safer. You know, if you run a little lean or something, we shouldn't run into too much knock or anything like that. So we do want to save that. That is important to do. So now that we have our K value close, we've taken a little bit of timing out of the timing map. What we'll also need to do is flatten the fuel map a little bit. As you can see in the 3D graph, it's pretty high up here on the top right and low down here on the bottom left. All this light blue shaded is the closed loop O2 feedback. To turn off the closed loop, you can either enter a manual value, I believe it's under a certain number, which will automatically put it in closed loop or not. So let's see. So there's a couple ways you can edit the map to be in closed loop or out of closed loop. Any number above, I think it's 128, will be in the closed loop setting in the ECU. So if you look right here, if we go to 128 and hit enter, you can see this did shade light blue, and it kind of adjusted the colors of the rest of the map, but this is in closed loop. So if we go back to here and go to 127, you can see we're out of the closed loop and we're super rich right here, red, and it has turned the rest of the map green. So any number, I believe, over 128 is closed loop, and under 127 is just accessing the fuel map. It does go over that in the software guide, talks a little bit about that, but we'll go ahead and put this back to 192. The other Other thing you can do is highlight the cell and click the O button for O2, and that should turn the closed loop feature off. And then I believe if you hit the 0 or the O key again, it does. It puts it right back into closed loop. So one of the things I did is I actually took a lot of this out of closed loop because I realized when I was getting on boost, it was actually right about in here, and it was still trying to access the closed loop instead of just dumping fuel in. Again, this will be adjusted in the load scales. In order to take these out of closed loop and flatten the map, I'm going to highlight these and kind of give them a number somewhere close to what's surrounding it. So I'll go ahead and do that now.
So I'm just putting values of 19 in all these areas. So we've got a little bit less of a closed loop area, and
where I'll actually highlight all this, and we'll decrease the fuel down just using the minus key to try and flatten it out a little bit. We'll go ahead and do this little area as well down here. Put this down. And I did already do some testing to kind of figure out how much I needed to decrease the fuel. I kind of did this while I was driving and figuring everything out. So whenever you're driving or running the car, you always want to keep a close eye on the wideband gauge and make sure that if you decrease fuel right here with your current K value, that you're not going super lean. Like right here, it does look a little low, so I might highlight this right here and bring it up just a little bit for testing. So now we have the little bit of timing taken out. We've flattened the fuel map a little bit. The next thing we need to do is find the max TP load index. So to find the max TP load index, I've actually added a bar graph right here. You can right click on the background of the Nistune and click bar graph. It'll pop up a new bar graph, and then you can right click on the actual gauge and go to gauge settings, and you can select a whole bunch of different things. Let's see, on this top drop down box, RPM, MAF, coolant temp, but what we are looking for is the TP load index, not the TP, but the load index. Let's delete this. So what that references is the numbers across the top of your fuel map and your timing map. So what happens is if you're driving and hit full boost and the cursor slams into the last column of your fuel map, you need to adjust the load scales. So let's see if we can do a quick run and see what we're talking about. All right, so this is the fresh tune that we've just been playing with. I'm gonna go ahead and upload everything to the ECU and burn the changes. So let's see if this fresh tune that we've been playing with will start up. So we did start up. I did connect the wideband, so we'll click the wideband button. Got to let the wideband go through all the error codes before it will read properly. There we go. So we're running super rich. I do have the wideband as a bar graph, the actual numbers here too. So what we're looking for right now is the TP load index. We want to find the max value that this reaches under full boost or full load. So right now we're just running on wastegate pressure, which is 10 psi. So we're going to be looking at a couple things. We're looking to see where this cursor goes on the fuel map. You can see it highlights in yellow with the, you can right click on the map. I think it's actually, you can do trace trail, and trace follow. So it marks where you've been in the map.
You can also take it off, and it should just highlight yellow. So let's go for a quick run, and let's make sure that the AFRs stay moderately safe, and we'll see if we can find our max load value.
All right, just for a comparison, we're going to look at the fuel load scale. If we come over here to the scalars, first one, fuel load scale, and then we'll go to operations, resize injectors, just to kind of compare and see what happens when we do have this adjust load scalars checkbox marked. So we've got 180 old injectors, 490 new injectors, and we're looking at the fuel load scale right here. Our minimum value is 16 and our maximum value is 128, and it does look pretty linear in the bar graph. So we will select adjust load scalars and see what happens. So if you look, our minimum value down here went down to 5 and our maximum value went down to 47. So this is the area, or this is the issue you'll run into when on your fuel map you'll slam into the right side. Again, this is just a fresh tune I pulled up just so that we could compare. So if you look up here, you'll see your scalars, 5 on the left side and 47 on the right side.
So now we're back in Nistune, fresh start. We'll console with the ECU. We'll download this, download the maps that we've already adjusted, taking timing out and flattening the fuel map, as well as adjusted the closed loop area. So let's go for a quick run and see what our TP load index looks like. Again, we did this
without adjusting the load scalars, so we're still at 16 as a minimum and 128 as a max. But if you notice, our TP right now is at 8. So if you look at our cursor, it's slammed onto the left side column of the fuel map and timing map. So, that's one thing that needs to be adjusted. And then also the max load. We'll need to find out what the max load is and adjust that to these last two columns. All right, a quick drive, second gear pull. Only hit about 4 PSI right there, and we can see from the cursor, we only made it to right here. So I'm gonna pull over. So it was kind of hard to tell, but it looks like right here, the only column we reached, we only hit about 4 PSI, but if you look up here, the value is 80. And then over here, about the same thing, the value is actually 36. So we'll need to adjust both of these load scales for the timing map and the fuel map. So for the fuel load scale, we need to find our minimum and maximum values. Our minimum value here, just at idle, we're right around anywhere from 8, 10, 11. So we need this minimum value over here to be somewhere around there. So let's change this to 7. And then our max load index that we reached was over here, was around 80. So just to play it safe, let's put this last column at 90. So we might run a little weird here, but what I'm gonna do is highlight that last box, hit, I think it's shift, yeah, shift and click, left click, then we'll right click. So we highlighted all the boxes and we'll do a linear interpolate. So that basically just brought this whole fuel load scale down. The min before was, I believe, 16. Now our minimum is 7. The maximum before was 128, way up here on the bar graph, and now we're all the way down to 90. The other thing we need to do is adjust the ignition load scale over here on the load scalars as well. Minimum, we're gonna go ahead and just copy the same as the fuel load. So we'll put minimum at 7, maximum over here at 90, enter, shift, left click, right click, linear interpolate, and so you can see that this bar graph, you might not be able to see it, but it flattened out right there. So let's exit out of these. We will upload this, make sure everything's properly. This should all be real time, but we will upload and burn just to save it. And let's do another little pull. We'll also pull up the trace feature here since I have the wideband connected. We'll go down, should see something. There it is, LAFR, I think for the left air fuel. We'll go down here, reset all, and there we go. So you can see where I'm just got my foot on the gas there to keep it from dying. But now we're running really rich, but we are not in that last to the left column. We've got one column up at the 12 load index. You can see right there, TP is 11. We're right in the 12 column because there is no 11 column. So let's just run another little pull here and see what it looks like. Second gear, probably can't see the laptop, about to hit this dude on the lawnmower. And let's pull. Only hit 6 PSI. Air fuels were right around 13. So when we hit 6 PSI, you can see right here the max TP load index that we reached was 56. The AFRs right there were 13, 12, so not terrible. This is just part of the testing and playing with that needs to be done. So these are just some of the basics of, you know, trying to figure out the load scales and the bare minimum of things that need to be adjusted to get the car kind of running and driving a little bit better. As you can see, still running really rich down here at idle. I haven't dialed in the injection latency or dead time or anything. So just to be safe, I highlighted this little area of the fuel map, and I'm going to increase this couple points just like that, and I'm gonna go do another couple pulls and see what it feels like. One other thing we need to look at is the fuel and ignition RPM scale. It can be found over here in the scalers area. I did bring this down a little bit, but it actually brought the maximum RPM range up to, or down to 4,000. So I did have to adjust this back. Right now I've got a value of 8 on the far left and a value of 130 on the far right. So you can see the map or the graph right here. The 8 is right here around, you know, 400, 800 RPMs, and then the 15 on the 15th column is around 6,500 RPMs. So before it was capping out at 4,000, so I did need to adjust this, and I'm pretty sure your ignition RPM scale needs to be somewhere similar. So I'll go ahead and adjust this. You can see right here it's only at 4,500 RPM, so let's change this to, I think they're supposed to be pretty close to each other unless you start running into problems. So we'll change that to 130. Shift left click over on this side and linear interpolate, so we get more or less of a straight line. So that might have been an issue. It did change. So this was, these values that are stored here were actually before I changed the fuel RPM scale. So before I changed that, the value of 4,000 RPMs was up here at the top. So it was only reading your, you know, I was only on the map at 4,000 RPMs. Anywhere above 4,000 RPMs, it just defaults to whatever, I guess, the last cell that it was in. So probably need to do another couple test runs. It does run a little bit differently than that other tune I had on here. So one thing we can do is you have a main ECU image up here and a compare image. So we can open up this right here, and I do have right here best tune 220. This was my best tune before, so I'm gonna load this up, and then we'll use the compare feature right here, the little magnifying glass, So everything highlighted in blue is different. So real quick, I just wanted to go over the compare feature again. I actually have the tunes reversed. I have my old tune up here in the top, which is the current tune, and then I have the tune that I was just working on the road there, right down here in the bottom in the compare section. So to compare, you hit the little magnifying glass radio button up here, and it highlights all the maps or scales in blue that are different. So obviously the fuel map's different, timing map is different, the fuel load scale. So this is the difference between the auto-adjusted one and the one that I manually adjusted. But you can see by these two lines, you might be able to see that it's pretty close. So if I click the compare again up here, it removes the secondary tune image, which is the one we were just working on. And if I click the compare image, you can see it highlight right above it in a purple line. So either, using the auto adjust feature or not, we kind of arrived at the same spot. You can also do some testing on your own, just trying to see what happens when you adjust the load scalars and kind of take a look at each one. The other thing you can do, instead of having a linear interpolation where it's just a line graph, you can actually change it and have more resolution down here on the bottom or the top. So because I'm having issues at idle running really rich, instead of going 8, 10, 13, 17, 25, I could maybe go, say, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then start jumping up by bigger numbers. So that'll give you a little bit more resolution down here in the bottom. Normally when that is done, I think is up at the top end when you're really trying to dial in, exact AFRs for certain amounts of boost. But it's just something to keep in mind that this line doesn't necessarily have to be a straight line. It can actually be a curve. It can be low down here, high up here, whatever. The other thing I was looking at was the MAF translation. So if we look at the MAF translation on this, which was this was an auto-adjusted load scaler tune when I had that checkbox marked. So when I do compare, all these percent values show 100. So I don't really see a difference in the graph, but I'm not sure what the 100% value is and if that's affecting my tune. So these are all just things to keep in mind, to check and cross-reference. You can always pull up Nistune without being connected to the ECU and just load some base maps to take a look at them and see what they look like and compare, your new tune to, a base tune. But that's the basics of, trying to dial in the K value. The K value comes first. You want to get that close. I was running anywhere from like a 195 K value all the way up to 440. 440 definitely fouled all the injectors, pegged the AFR gauge straight to 10 and just dumping fuel in there. So it does take a little bit of playing with it, adjusting things and seeing how the car runs. You might have to adjust things back or forth, or start over with a fresh tune just to get a fresh starting point. So those are some of the things I've done. Hopefully this gives a little bit of information on how to play with Nistune. Maybe in the future I'll upload some videos on some more precise tuning and dialing in of the fuel map and the K value if I can figure that out. But this is just a starting point. The car does run and drive and makes boost pretty well.